Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is January 12th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see British Columbia, Washington, Oregon. You can see the next round of moisture organizing off the coastline here, mainly going to stream into Oregon here, but some of this could spread into southwest Washington. And as this storm treks eastward, it's going to bring winter storm warnings and actually some blizzard conditions across Idaho. We'll look into those details. We have a very cold air mass settling down over the region. You don't need me to tell you. All you have to do is step outside here. Some very low wind chills. The temperature right now at my house is very close to the Puget Sound is 20 degrees. So bitter cold out there. And you can continue to see the trek of this Arctic air as it moves off to the east through Montana as well. So we'll look at those details. We're also going to take a first look at the extended forecast as well. There's a couple things we need to talk about as we go into the mid portion of next week as far as transition from cold air back to some warmer air here. So stay with me as we go through the video here. Now taking a look at a wider view of things here, you can see that storm system, and this is that moisture that's going to be impacting Oregon. Could be some freezing rain as well for some areas, especially down across some of the Willamette Valley, some of the coastal areas, as we get a ton of warm air off the surface here. So I'll go into that in some detail here in a moment. Take a look at some of the wind chills out here. I mean, just ridiculous. Well down into the teens here. It was actually below zero there for Everett for a little bit. Very cold as the Fraser River outflow is going now. And look at eastern Washington. And if you really want to get crazy, look off across some of the Rockies in eastern Montana as well. Very cold air mass. The Arctic air swoops down across the region. Look at interior of BC. Very cold also. And this is why wind chill is so dangerous here, because it just strips the heat right off your body. You usually have that thin layer of heat when the wind is calm. And then when they break that up, you can really remove the body heat pretty quickly here. So the science of wind chill there. Here we go for Portland, Oregon here for the winter storm timeline. This was issued yesterday, but it still applies. Friday morning, afternoon should be okay, but by the time we start to get towards the evening and nighttime hours here, the coldest air is going to be starting to move down across some of northwest Oregon here. And you can see as we go through Saturday morning, moderate snow with strong winds. Columbia River Gorge, very windy, cold, and snowy with potential blizzard conditions. Greater Portland Metro, Vancouver area, cold, snowy, gusty east winds. Willamette Valley, freezing rain. South of Salem, snow north, but there could be some freezing rain trying to move in even towards the Portland Metro here. And I'll show you that, some of the soundings here in a moment. You see the coast, mainly freezing rain. There's going to be that very thin layer of cold air at the surface with that rain trying to ride over the top of it. Could bring some very dynamic conditions here. There could still be some snow mixed in or some ice pellets as well. And then you can see Sunday, the precipitation ending here, but also Saturday afternoon and evening, the snow lingers, strong winds, Columbia River Gorge. Those winds are going to be ripping out of the east here. Very impactful winter storm coming into Oregon here as well. And this is also going to set up across some portions of southwest Washington with a pretty dynamic snow band trying to creep into Washington a bit. I'll show you that here as we go. This is Medford Nash weather surface. You can see that ice accumulation risk does exist for Cottage Grove, North, Eugene, Corvallis here. So I'll show you that more here in a moment. This is also the extreme cold through the weekend here. Check out places like Seattle and Enumclaw, Aberdeen. Look at Bellingham, wind chills down into the negative teens there. So very cold air mass. Don't forget about pets and plants, and cover your pipes out there as well. That wind can help push some of that cooler air right into some of your the exterior of your home and actually help freeze the pipes a bit there. Dangerous wind chills. This is for eastern Washington. Just downright ridiculous. Sometimes getting down towards negative 30, and of course even colder across the interior of British Columbia and off into Montana as well. Major impacts. This is for Idaho here, and there's going to be some very heavy snowfall here as we go through the day Saturday as well. So heads up for that, and I'll show you a little bit more on that here in a moment. Starting now, actually, you can see the winter storm warnings for much of eastern Oregon and through Idaho. Look at some of the blizzard warnings across southern Idaho as well. We got the winter storm watch here still across northwest Oregon, probably going to get upgraded as we go through the day today. We got wind advisories out there for the outflow winds across northwest Washington and some east winds, gusty east winds coming through the Stampede Gap along some of the foothill areas also. And this is that strong Arctic cold front. I mentioned this here yesterday. Extreme impacts through Idaho and Montana, especially eastern Montana, as rapid temperature drops ongoing right now and potential whiteout conditions. Now, taking a look at what's coming here, you got the European on the left versus the GFS on the right. We have pretty good model agreement on the position of this next slug of moisture moving in here, and you can see it really start to come in as we go through Saturday morning here. You can kind of see it impacting some of the Willamette Valley, Valley. You can see some of that freezing rain potential across the Willamette Valley and the coastal areas as well on both the GFS and the European. We're going to go into that in a little bit more detail here in a moment. But you can see this snow band raising up across some of Centralia, Chehalis on the 06 European, and kind of a similar placement here on the GFS. So there's going to be quite a high impact snow event here across southwest Washington as well. I don't want people to sleep on that. North of the Portland area is going to get hit pretty hard here, and some very cold temperatures. Dry, fluffy snow. Could be some blowing snow out there as well, as some very low visibility be associated with that snow band. So don't just concentrate on the Willamette Valley or Oregon, because southwest Washington is bound to get hit pretty hard by this system as we go on in through Saturday night. Now we go on into Sunday, and you can see that precipitation finally coming to an end by the time we go towards Sunday evening, and then some residual snow across some of Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana as we go on into very early Monday morning. And then we've got something else looming on the horizon here. So we're going to still have some cold air in place, and some of the models have been showing a potential wintry start to things here as we go on in through the midweek period. More on that here towards the end of the video. And here we're looking at Astoria. So this is what's known as a temperature cross section. You can see the 0 degree line here, and you can see as we scroll on in here, you'll notice that tongue of warm air just off the surface, but the freezing air at the surface. That's what is known as a freezing rain event here. Because if you're dropping, you're melting things here, and you have that rainfall falling into that sub-freezing layer there at the surface, that can create quite dynamic freezing rain conditions. So let's take a look at Tillamook here, a little bit further down the Oregon coast. You'll see this very cold air start to move in as we go through late Friday night into Saturday. Look at that very cold air at the surface, thin layer of sub-freezing temperatures there with the warmer air aloft dropping rain, and then that would be freezing on the surfaces here across a lot of the Oregon coastline here. And you can see for the majority of this event, it stays above freezing just off the surface, but it stays below freezing all the way on in through Saturday afternoon. We continue on in through Saturday night here, and it stays below freezing there. So it could be a pretty dynamic impact here for some ice accumulation across some portions of western Oregon. This is Tillamook. This is another way to look at things here, because you can see the surface below freezing, and then once you get up towards 2,000 feet in the atmosphere, it's above freezing. So you can drop in rainfall into that very cold air trapped at the surface there along a lot of the Oregon coast. This is Portland. You notice how it's colder aloft here. So it looks like for at least some of the Portland metro here, it's probably going to remain snow as for much of the event. However, some of the models are showing a brief warm tongue trying to creep in there, so it might be mixed with ice pellets at times. This is Salem. You can see that colder air at the surface here, and once you get above 2,500 feet, that warm tongue kind of nosing in here, which could drop some freezing rain, or maybe it'll freeze back into ice pellets by the time it hits the surface there. This is looking at Eugene. Check it out. Very dangerous conditions potentially incoming here as we go through the day Saturday with that cold air trapped at the surface and the warmer air above it here. So again, some possible ice accumulations going on. Now here we're looking at Portland. Same thing here. There's that isotherm here at 0 degrees. And as we go on in through the day, tonight we drop below freezing there, and again should be some snow flying here as we go on in towards late tonight on into Saturday morning here, again depending on the exact timing of that system. We'll look at that again here in a moment, but you can see a little bit of that tongue going above freezing here at about 2,500 3,000 feet. So you might get some ice pellets mixed in with the snow at times for some of the Portland metro. And again, the further south and the further southwest or west you go, the better chance for some of the warmer temperatures to move in aloft. But again, a lot of the Portland metro is going to remain snow most likely. But as we look down towards Salem, check it out. You'll see the temperatures dropping below freezing here as we go through this evening here. And then you see that warmer air aloft kind of creeping in there and maybe bringing that freezing rain as the temperatures at the surface are very cold with the above freezing conditions just off the surface there. And this is kind of another way to look at it here, a diagram. You can see freezing rain, again, that thin layer of freezing air at the surface with the warmer conditions above, and you can see as the warmer air is lesser, you can kind of see it might refreeze into some ice pellets here, and if it stays cold throughout the entire column, of course it remains as snow. And if you want a nice affordable home weather station, record all this crazy weather we get here in the Pacific Northwest, click on that link down below to save 10% off. It's very fun to watch this station, and it goes with your smartphone, and you can view it anywhere. What I wouldn't have given to have this when I was a kid. Now, taking a look, here's another look at the freezing rain potential here down in Northwest Oregon. You can see you've got the 2-meter temperature here on the right, and we've got 5,000 foot temperature here on the left. This is both European models here. So as we scroll on in, you can see the very cold air trapped into some of the Willamette Valley in Northwest Oregon, all the way down into the teens. But look at what's coming at 5,000 feet, actually going above freezing for some of the Willamette Valley, Northwest Oregon. That's why we have this freezing rain potential. As you can see, some of that tries to creep in towards the Portland Metro here also, so it could turn into some ice pellets here. But you can see very cold temperatures all the way to the mid-20s with warmer air above. So we could be looking at a pretty significant freezing rain event for some of the Willamette Valley and some of the Oregon coastline here. Hopefully that gives you a nice visual representation of what's going on. Now, looking at the European, I want to show you what this precipitation moving in. This is going to be quite dynamic across perhaps Centralia, Chehalis, maybe even up towards Olympia a little bit here. Places like Kelso and Longview down here, just north of the Portland Metro. Even Vancouver could be included at times. But notice as I click back and forth between the 0.06 and the 3 inches there, look at the temperatures. They could be down into the teens in the low 20s with some gusty winds out here as well. So this is just going to be a complete winter wonderland. Low visibility, I-5 corridor affected between Portland all the way up towards Olympia again. And this would be going on in through the day Saturday. We're in early afternoon right here. And then you can see the snow start to pile up as we go through Saturday afternoon and through evening. So this is high impact stuff here, you guys, against Southwest Washington, across Southwest Washington, down towards the Portland Metro. Look at some of these temperatures there. These are wind chill temperatures there, but very chilly conditions here and high impact stuff. Now, taking a look at accumulated freezing rain. We're going to scroll ahead here on in through the day today. You can see not much of a deal, kind of ignore that across the Cascades. Then we go on into Saturday, and you can see this ice accumulation, especially across some of the central Willamette Valley here, and even some of the southern Willamette Valley. You can see it really starting to pile up across some of the coastal areas as well. And once you start getting up over half an inch, you can start to get damage to trees and power lines and all kinds of nasty stuff here. So you can kind of see that potential showing up on last night's European for the freezing rain. Now looking at the North American model versus the 80-meter wind speeds. Watch how these winds are going to kick up through the gorge. We get rolling here as we go through tonight a bit, and then we really pick things up as we go through Saturday morning. Storm system arrives here, and you can see some of this ice pellet action and freezing rain on the North American model with that snow band a little bit further south on some of these high-resolution models. So we'll see how that works out. But look at the wind just absolutely roaring across the gorge with some snow flying. Blizzard conditions possible. Stampede gap winds going as well out of the east as the storm system treks across eastern Oregon. That's why there's winter storm warnings out for much of eastern Oregon. You could probably even put out some blizzard warnings out there for some of the gorge area and areas east through, across Oregon-Washington border there as well. Now, looking at the Cascade Locks is back in the gorge here, and you can see the big snowfall that will be occurring just after the wind starts also. And then you can see as we go on into the mid portion of the week, starting Tuesday night, we might get some additional round of snow here depending on how the next system unfolds. We'll take a look at that at the end of the video here. This is Portland International and the European. You can clearly see the ensemble members showing a nice snowfall incoming here. Again, as we go through the afternoon on Saturday, GFS, pretty good agreement there as well. And again, we have the potential for some of the areas here, for some of the Portland Metro, getting some heavy snowfall amounts up through Vancouver and into Southwest Washington. Now, this is Seattle, so here we go. Some of the European ensemble members actually show a little bit of snow trying to creep northward with that band that you saw across some of Southwest Washington. It looks like a big long shot right now, but you can't completely rule it out, and sometimes these moist Pacific storms can throw some of this freezing precipitation a little bit further north. And I'm telling you what, into the low 20s, it wouldn't take much. An inch of snowfall would be quite disruptive across some of the Seattle Metro going south towards Tacoma or Olympia if some of this does creep up. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind. Now, looking out into Tuesday night into Wednesday, the European is a little more bullish, actually, with bringing some snow across some areas here. But there's going to be huge amounts of uncertainty here, and I don't want anybody to get caught up in snow totals or anything like that as we go on into next week. We're just kind of letting you know about the possibility here, because you might see some of this stuff start to show up on your smartphone app, and then people get nervous and they start asking questions. And I'm trying to nip that in the bud here. Don't get caught up in these totals just yet. There's a lot of details to be worked out before we start worrying about snowfall with that Tuesday night into Wednesday system. Although it is a long shot possibility at this point, it's just fantasy. Seattle, Tacoma, you can see as we go through Saturday morning, that's when the coldest temperatures are going to be across much of western Washington. Some bone-chilling wind chills, probably down towards zero, even for the Seattle metro. And some of these lows could be getting down into the lower teens here. And then you can see this slow, arduous climb back towards the modification here with that next system. It's going to be really a borderline event here if it does occur. This is Vancouver, also showing the potential for that overrunning snowfall event as we go in towards next week. No promises just yet. This is purely fantasy. It's just kind of give you a heads up when you look at your smartphone app and you start seeing snowflakes on Tuesday and Wednesday showing up here. Now, Bellingham International, same thing is going to be in play for that time frame. And you can see Yakima could actually be getting some snowfall on the north side of this low as it tracks through eastern Oregon here as well as we go on in through Saturday night into Sunday morning, and then potential for more as we go through midweek. Now, looking at the GFS, I have not looked at this 12Z run yet here. This is running as we speak. So let's take a look, excuse me, at what's going on here. Here we go with the system, and you can see that snow trying to ride up north towards Centralia and Chehalis here. And again, it's going to be a dynamic snow band here, Portland Metro northbound across Vancouver and up towards Chehalis, and maybe even trying to clip portions of Olympia south. And then the system moves through, and you can see it track across eastern Oregon and Idaho as well. That system moves out. So now what does this next one bring here? Here goes the GFS, and you can see it's starting some of the precipitation here across western Washington. Western Oregon could start with some freezing rain. It doesn't look like too heavy values, but this is actually an upward trend here. I believe the 06Z did not show much of this wintry stuff showing up. And the further north you move here across some of Bellingham and southwest BC into the interior valleys, some of that cold air would be trapped in this scenario a bit more. So this is something we have to watch. A little bit of an uptrend here on the GFS. Now looking at last night's European model run there. There's our Arctic front. Here goes our system as we go through Saturday, trying to creep up towards Centralia there and pushing off to the east. And then what did the European show? You can see it kind of brings that system here. The low pressure actually right into the Oregon coast would be a wintry scenario here, but it's just fantasy right now. This is kind of just to give you the heads up here when you start to see some people hyping this next storm system here. It's fantasy right now. There's many different ways this could play out, and this cold air could be scoured out before the system even starts to drop precipitation, depending on just the track of this low and what unfolds as we go through the early portion of the week. So purely fantasy of this point, but there is that potential. Now, 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, you can see as we go through January 25th, we start to warm things up here on the west coast, perhaps a more southwesterly flow. Take it with a grain of salt at this range, but you can see the signal in the Climate Prediction Center and the 8 to 14 day as well, still above average precipitation totals during that time frame. So yeah, we really dodged a really major snowstorm. If this polar lobe would have come out a couple hundred miles out over the water, you can see how it crept out. We didn't have the upper levels of the atmosphere really reaching out off the terrain here over the open water and creating the cyclogenesis here that we would have needed for widespread snow. But we still got some pretty high impact stuff here across some of the area. It was very slick out there in some places. North of Seattle got a couple, 2-3 inches. In some places on the Olympic Peninsula, like we talked about, got better amounts there as well, and very slick conditions. You probably saw some of the video out there going on during yesterday afternoon, mainly Lake Stevens and Everett area up there as well. And it did bring some light snowfall to SeaTac there yesterday. There were de-icing operations, so that in itself is kind of a higher impact thing, although the airport did pretty good keeping the planes de-iced because there was not a lot of moisture to work with because we did not get that cyclogenesis. We really dodged a big snow bullet with that across a lot of the places. But this next system here is going to impact the northwest Oregon and whatnot into southwest Washington. So that's probably going to be the higher impact event out of this. But, it still was pretty interesting there yesterday. And a lot of Vancouver, BC got some pretty interesting snowfall as well. So, yeah, anyway, we got some stuff to watch as we go on into the extended. As you saw here, we'll see how the models trend with that potential snow as we go through Tuesday night into next Wednesday, and we'll break things down again tomorrow. Hopefully you guys are liking these videos. Hopefully you guys are ready for the storm system down across western Oregon. And yeah, what else to say? And not much else. So yeah, be prepared for the cold temperatures. I mean, you guys can just go outside and really feel that right now. And again, Saturday morning will be the coldest here across much of the region. But anyway, we'll do this again tomorrow. We'll break everything down. I work one more day, then I may actually go chase some gap winds, the Stampede Gap, or maybe the Gorge down there and get some blizzard conditions. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, we'll do this again tomorrow. I'll talk to you then, and I hope you guys are having a good day.